is Chris Akin Presents. I am Chris Akin. That is Erik Ferentinos. And dude, how cool were those guys?
They were way cool, man. That guy was straight off the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm from Jersey. I could say that.
You can. You get away.
In New Jersey, Englewood Cliffs Hospital, to be exact.
Look at you. You get away with it. But
look what time it is.
What are we drinking? White Claw?
Nope. We're not on the claw tonight. This is a Cantina Especial.
Oh, what is that?
Tequila soda.
Tequila soda.
You know what I saw when I was in this supermarket? A friend of mine that I know happened to be in the supermarket, and she was about to set up a stand where they promote some new product.
Okay.
And she had a case of Monacos, which of course made me think of Johnny Monaco.
Right.
Or other guitarists, but these things are strong as hell. I don't know if the listeners have ever heard of Monaco, but they make a tequila soda, they make a vodka soda, 9% alcohol on those. It's like three shots of tequila or vodka in each one. So,
well, you drink 2 of those and you can't play your gig.
I could.
Well, you could. You're an alcoholic.
Other humans couldn't. But
that's right. Pro like you, I've watched you drink half a bottle of Jack Daniels and get out there and play Bow Wow Wow tunes.
That's right.
And roar. Well, real quick, the Lansdowne guys already hit us up on YouTube thanking us for having them on, and not a problem, man. We like those guys a lot.
We do.
And I'm not, and I mean, I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're just kissing their ass because they're on. No, that fucking record
I want to get
rocks.
a video done over at their place,
dude. I'm telling you,
be honest.
I'm telling you, that video looks great. Both of those videos look great. I mean, dude, come on, look at this video. Look at how cool this looks. I mean, this just looks very cool, very, very well done. I mean, they're definitely doing high end shit. That is for sure. So, great
that
band.
Singer looks like he'd kick your ass if you had anything else to say about it.
Yeah, but so did that Tim Lambesis from As I Lay Dying, and he had to hire somebody else just to take his wife out. So,
he's from here.
That Lambesis is?
Yeah. And the band for a while was, I think, owners in the Brick by Brick, which is our shithole metal club that we have, that we've had forever. It used to be called The Spirit in the late 1970s. Piercy played there as a kid, and his big story was that they paid him to leave. It was so bad that they actually gave him money to leave, and he goes, yeah. So
I'll take it.
It was Brick by Brick still for a long time now.
Okay.
And I don't know if they still own it. The guitarist, I think, and the drummer, maybe.
I don't know. Outside of Attempted Murder, I don't know much about Tim Lambesis. I do know As I Lay Dying. I loved the band.
Right.
I did love the band before. I haven't really listened to him since, but
And he didn't kill her.
He didn't. Yeah, he didn't kill her. He just tried.
Yeah.
And I've said it a million times. I don't condone it.
Could have been worse. It could have been worse.
I don't condone it, but I understand. To quote Chris Rock, I don't condone it, but I understand. But yeah. So anyway, Lansdowne, make sure you check them out. Lansdownemusic.com, and that's LANDOWNES. No S. Lansdowne. No S. LANDOWNE music.com. Lansdownemusic.com. So make sure you check them out.
I felt dumb because we talked about them being from Boston, and then my first question was like, "So you guys from the Poconos?" But I got all excited because I always have the Poconos as like a soft spot in my heart. Besides, I'm feeding squirrels and birds.
I know. I'm listening to the questions. I'm like, you're fucking talking about the power of the nature and this. You're talking about the power of nature, and I'm like, the nature in Boston. What are you talking about?
No, not in Boston. Although, no, Massachusetts has beautiful parts to it too. But
I never saw any.
But the Poconos, what was weird is that was also the first time I think I heard Back in Black. Like I was walking through the woods, and there was like some kind of like little YMCA rec center or something out there that was like on a weekend. But these kids, and like if you can imagine in the late 1970s, where everybody's kind of hippied out looking,
Yeah.
and had a boombox. And I remember I saw them in the woods, and I was kind of hiding because I was only like probably 8 years old, tripping around, and I heard some music, and they were playing the new AC/DC Back in Black album, and they were smoking weed and passing it joints in a circle, and it was I remember just checking it out, going, man, I wish I could go hang out with them, and the music was badass, and that all happened in that area. So
nice, very nice. Well, dude, I did have a topic or two I wanted to discuss outside of Lansdowne, and just real quick, I know we advertised tonight that Ronnie Monroe was going to be on from Vicious Rumors. He is not going to be on tonight. He had a death in the family quite suddenly, so he's dealing with that. We will get him on, just not this week, because he's obviously dealing with something much more important than CHRIS Akin Presents. So, hope he's doing okay, and we'll catch up with him, at a later date once his life settles down a little bit. Yeah. But let's move to something I did want to talk with you about, because you probably have some insight or some thought in this. Have you been seeing the number of 90s bands, 90s and early 2000s bands that are either reuniting or at least are coming together for a lot of these festivals now? Have you been seeing that?
Yes, I have.
How does that affect the 80s guys, which you obviously are in that world? Does that make less gigs, or is that welcomed by you guys, or do you hate that because it, softens the amount of money that's out there, or what?
No, I certainly don't hate it. And the 80s bands that have been doing the festivals are going to continue to do them.
Okay.
I mean, we still probably have another 20 years of those 80s bands. Possibly. Okay. Maybe not that long. A lot of they might have replacements of the band by then. Sure. I mean, obviously a lot of them are in their late 60s, early 70s now, but maybe at least another 10 years of that perhaps. But it just makes sense that the 90s bands would be next to be the classic rock grandpa cruise, or what have you. It makes me feel old, to be honest, seeing it.
Dude, is that going to be weird when you go on the Monsters of Rock cruise and it's Papa Roach and Pearl Jam? That just sounds like it's going to be weird.
Right. Or Bush. I guess that would be, there's some cool 90s bands, sure, that I wouldn't mind being on the bill with.
Yeah, but the question is will they, if you put them together, will they draw an audience though? If you put Dokken on the same bill with Bush, is that going to move the needle to spend $2,000 on a boat ticket?
I don't know if that's even a good idea, to be honest, because everybody knows that it was the 90s that kind of put out the fire
of the 80s.
So yeah. I think it's almost like having the Crips and the Bloods play a festival together. It's just not
right
in the best interest.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. I hadn't ever thought about that, but
remember the Motley Crue Pam and Tommy movie when Motley thought they were the shit and they could go into the recording studio whenever they wanted?
Oh yeah.
And then they get in there and there's a band in their room and they're like, "Hey man, what are you doing here?" And they're like, "Oh, well, it's our studio now. We're Third Eye Blind."
Yeah, that's right. Third Eye Blind. Yeah, dude. I mean, that's got to be crushing when you've been top of the mountain and all of a sudden, you came down the hill, so to speak. That's got to suck.
Right.
And I hate, the thing that's weird to me is because I'll be honest, I did not love the 90s are probably my least favorite era of music. Just in general. And that's not to say that I don't like a lot of the bands and I didn't have a lot of fun with a lot of those bands. I've told my stories about partying with No Doubt and Gwen Stefani and stuff, which were epic amounts of fun, hanging out, getting hammered with 311 and shit like that. I mean, just having a lot of fun with a lot of those bands. But to go back and listen to them now, it's like, the reason this one came up to me was that I saw that the band Trust Company announced the original lineup to reunite for that Blue Ridge Rock Festival.
Okay.
And they sucked. Trust Company was a bad band when they were a relevant band. And I cannot imagine going to anything to see Trust Company or Cold or Edema or Puddle of Mud.
Slow down there, Chris. Slow down.
Okay.
I mean, Cold and Edema are some pretty cool bands.
Come on. Come on, really? Edema had one good record. That first one.
And he's related to
Jonathan
the guy
Davis.
in Korn, right?
Yeah, Jonathan Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's not in the band anymore.
Oh, he's
that
not?
Guy, no, that was Marky Chavez. He's not in the band anymore. Now it's some other guy.
You know everybody.
I do know, dude. Let me tell you my Edema story.
Please do.
So I was on WMMS, and myself and my partner Matt, the Warlock, we did the first ever Cleveland booking. We booked the first ever Cleveland show for Edema, on a Sunday afternoon. We did a metal show afternoon at, I think it was Peabody's. I think it was at Peabody's Down Under. And it was 3 bands that nobody had ever heard of before. Systematic, which was the first band ever signed to Lars's label.
Mm-hmm.
Which then featured and went on to feature Tim Narducci, who's in Spiral Arms, and then the Watchers, which are great stoner bands these days. If you like that stoner rock stuff, that's as good as it gets. Stoned. Well, you would like the Watchers, because boy, I know Narducci likes to find an herb or two, and he lives near you too. Or no, he's up north. He's in San Francisco. But maybe when you're up north, you could stop by Mr. Tim's place. He'd hook you up with a smoke or two. But that was the draw, was that they were the first band signed to Lars's side label. Then the second band on the bill was Puddle of Mud, that had never been in Cleveland before. And the third band was Edema. So we were like the first ones. We were the first booking that those 3 bands had in Cleveland.
That sounds like a kick-ass lineup.
It was pretty cool. I mean, it was cool for the time, but and like that was right before Puddle of Mud broke out with Blurry and She Fucking Hates Me and those songs. And, I think the biggest band on that bill might've been Edema at the time, because they had that, whatever that song was. Dun, 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 dun. I could think of it, but I don't remember the name of it. But, they didn't go on to do anything. Not really. Did they? Edema?
Well, they still tour, I think, with the now Rob Zombie has a cousin or brother or something.
Power Man 5000.
Right. I think
Spider One.
They get on those kind of gigs, doing club tours with Power Man 5000 and go out for a couple months. And, I think the name's, hung in there, Edema, long enough. Yeah. Peabody, the Shit Club of Cleveland.
It was. It was the Shit Club of Cleveland. It really was.
I don't know. I always played good gigs there. I don't care.
Well, maybe for state. See, I guess it depends on which Peabodys you played. Did you play the old one next to the lake, or did you play the one that was in the city that came after? No, you played the one that was in the city.
Probably played both. If it was in the last 22 years.
I know you played the one in the city, because I went to that show. That was the Metal Church and Steven and Wasp show. Yeah. Okay. And I went to that, but I don't think you would have played at the other one. That was in the late 90s. I think that closed and moved over. But that place was a shithole. That place was, first of all, it held maybe 200 people. It just was tiny. And this is such a fun story. So it had these poles, because it really wasn't meant to be a club. It was just meant to be like a storage room or something that they just modified into a club.
Station?
And it had these metal poles kind of in the middle. Like there was no seats. It was just a big mosh. Not big.
Was it a firehouse from back in the day?
No, it was just like a warehouse. It was just an old warehouse. And I just remember one night I was down there. The show was Blaze Bayley's version of Iron Maiden was the headliner, with Fear Factory opening up. And it was like 95, 96, whatever year, right in there. And it was dark, and they had all the strobes going for Fear Factory and whatever.
All right.
And Burt Bell, the singer of Fear Factory, like went to dive out into the crowd, and he didn't see the pole, and he just bonked right off the fucking pole.
Oh.
He almost knocked himself dead. He dove out like Superman dive, because he thought he was diving out into the crowd, and the pole couldn't have been a foot past the stage. And he's like, whoop, boink, and just straight down to the fucking ground. It was like, damn. Yeah, that club was a dive.
Right.
But I saw some good shows there.
Like that, like where on stage they have like random pole, like
yeah,
3/4 of the way onto the stage, and you're trying to like work around it, like ridiculous stuff like that. I'm glad we haven't had to do anything like that in a long time.
Dude, there were some clubs, especially in Cleveland or in the Cleveland area at that time. Like there was a club down in Canton called Sadie Renee's, and it was one of the best sounding clubs in the area. I mean, the sound was great in this place, but another room that just was not meant to be a club. And the problem this room had, super low ceilings, like you could reach up and touch the ceiling. Right. And I just remember I was seeing this band. There was a local band in Cleveland called Funnel, and they never went on to do anything, but they were killer. They were like theatrical and stuff, and they would wheel the singer out in a straitjacket on a furniture moving trolley. It was a crazy, wild show. At one point, this fucking kid jumped up into the rafters, and he was hanging upside down from the rafters, singing into his mic stand, which they lowered a little bit so that he could sing.
Rowdy.
It was fucking nuts. I was like, wow, look at this. Just crazy. I saw some craziness in those days, man. But yeah, I mean, but anyway, back to my point about the 90s bands. I think, this is my assumption, is much like the 90s did it to the 80s once, I think you're going to see, especially with there being less and less original members, and when you do have original members, they're fucking retirement age, or if nothing else, they should have been retired a long time ago. I think you're going to see a second wave of the 90s killing the 80s, but now killing them on the casino circuit.
Potentially. I
hope not, because I have a lot of friends in that circle, but
yeah, I mean, honestly, this was the first or the end of 2022 I first started seeing all those bands piled on. But one thing I noticed is it took a lot more 90s bands to make it a show for some reason than it typically does for 80s bands. You don't have to put as many 80s bands on a bill to have a successful show as it appeared that they were trying to do with the 90s bands. I mean,
well,
they had,
you know why?
Everybody.
I'll tell you why, because the 80s had a longer lifespan.
Right.
The 80s had what, about a legitimate 10 year span. Because I mean, what would we say the start of the 80s would have been? 83.
The start of the 80s would be 1980, Chris.
Well, I know that. I mean the music, Dick. I mean the music. What do you say? 83? The metal sound, the metal time would be like 83. I'm saying
the metal years.
Yeah, the hair metal years. The popular metal, 83, 82, 83.
Yeah. Heavy metal had been going on for some time.
Yeah.
Now. Like, I mean, the late 70s, they were wearing animal skins and driving weird Chevy vans, and
right, or being Black Sabbath. That's what
writing
they were
songs
doing.
About monsters.
Right, exactly. But I'm saying the hair metal, the popular years, was probably from 83 to 91. And then it just died with Teen Spirit. You know, it just dropped dead, like suddenly, right then. I mean, the band still put out music, but it was kind of over at that point. So that's 9 years. And when you really think about it, there was only about, I would say, 10 to 15 bands that were big, that were truly big. You know, you got your Motley, Rat, Poison, Warrant. Who else? There's more than that, but
of the hair bands,
the hair bands that were huge, that were really
Bon
big.
Jovi,
Bon Jovi. Rat, you know, Dio on some level.
Sure. I mean, well, there was a ton. You know, one thing I'll say is it seems like the 90s, and I could be wrong, I'm just speculating, that the 90s had spawned more one-hit wonders, if anything.
Well, and that's my point. All the bands that were big in the 80s had 10, 15 hits.
Right.
All of them. So,
that's right.
So you don't need as many bands to have a night full of hits. To do a night full of hits. I mean, dude, we can't even name the song from Edema. We can't name it. Name a song.